Dominant 7th chord not doing it for you? Add something different with the 7 flat 5 chord. You just heard a C dominant 7th flat 5 chord. These chords are written in notation with the number 7, the flat symbol, and the number 5 after the chord letter. Now you might be asking, how do I construct these 7 flat 5 chords? You simply take an existing dominant 7th chord and flatten the 5th note by dropping it half a step or semitone. This means that they have the notes 1st, 3rd, flat or diminished 5th, and flat or minus 7th. These numbers show the notes that make up the 7 flat 5 chords. They are also referring to the intervals that are within the chord. It is like a formula or recipe that you can apply to generate 7 flat 5 chords. Let's look at an example to clarify this. The C major scale has the following notes: C, D, E, F, G, A, and B. The first note is C, third note is E, and fifth note is G. These notes create a C major chord. The 7th note is B. If you flatten this note, dropping it a half step or semitone, then you get the note B flat. Add this to the C major chord and you have a C dominant 7th chord. If you flatten the 5th note G by dropping it half a step or a semitone, then you have a G flat note. Use this in the previous chord and you have a C7 flat 5 chord with the notes C, E, G flat and B flat. The 7 flat 5 chord has a dissonant, mysterious and unresolved sound that is found widely in jazz music. Because of this dissonance, you will often find them used as passing chords, providing brief touches of tension. The 7 flat 5 is an interesting chord. It is enharmonically equivalent to its own second inversion. That is to say, it has the same notes but with different names. This means it has the same notes as the 7 flat 5 chord that is 3 tones or steps, or 6 semitones or half steps away. Let's take the C7 flat 5 I showed you earlier to explore this idea. It has the notes C, E, G flat and B flat. The second inversion of this therefore has the notes G flat, B flat, C and E. If you want to learn more about inverted chords, then check out my videos in the description. This should be the same as the 7 flat 5 chord a tritone away. To find this, I'll start at C and count up 6 notes. This gets you to F sharp. The F sharp 7 flat 5 chord has the notes F sharp, A sharp, C and E. If you are familiar with accidental notes, you will know that F sharp is equivalent to G flat and A sharp to B flat, which as expected is the same as the second inversion C7 flat 5. This means that in reality there are only 6 unique 7 flat 5 chords. 7 flat 5 chords do not feature diatonically in major keys. This is because they introduce a note, the flat 5, from outside of the scale. This goes some way to explaining their tension and dissonance. I'll show you some examples now using HookPad. There are links in the description if you want to get HookPad and follow along or to learn more. The easiest and most common way to use 7 flat 5 chords is just to substitute any dominant 7th chord you play with the 7 flat 5. I'll start in the key of C major. Dominant 7th chords normally feature as the 5 chord in order to resolve to the 1 chord. This is known as a perfect cadence. I'll present a few of these in a progression now. Then on repeat they'll be substituted with the 7 flat 5 chords. Listen to the difference the 7 flat 5 brings and how dissonant it sounds. 7 flat 5 chords are often used in jazz standards, giving a distinct sound flavour. A really common chord progression in jazz is the 2-5-1, where each chord is played as a 7th chord. If you want some help with 7th chords, then check out the playlist in the description. As in the previous example, all I will do is substitute the 5 dominant 7th chord with the 7 flat 5. Listen to the distinctive edge this brings to progression. 7 flat 5 chords are also used in the tritone substitution. This is where the 5 chord is replaced by a dominant 7th chord whose root is a tritone below. You know from earlier in the video that a tritone is 6 half steps. In our previous progression, the 5 chord was G major. 6 half steps below G is D flat. So in this case, I would substitute the G dominant 7th chord for a D flat dominant 7th. This chord is also called a flat second. Another way to find it is to take the root note of the minor 2 chord, drop it by half a step, and then create a dominant 7th chord from this new root note. In this case, the 2 chord is D minor, so we drop this note by half a step to D flat. This once again gets us to a D flat dominant 7th chord. This tritone substitution can be played as a 7 flat 5 chord to add another layer of complexity and tension. Also note how this progression now has a bass line descending by half steps from D to D flat to C. This kind of downward trajectory produces a pull towards the tonic chord, which can really help to reinforce the key. You also see minor ninth chords used in these sorts of progressions. Check out my video about minor ninth chords in the description below. Listen to this all in action now. I've shown you major keys, now let's look at minor/Aeolian keys. 7 flat 5 chords are probably found more in minor keys. There's a good reason for this, let's explore it now. Here are the chords in the key of C minor. A common thing to do is to play the minor 5 chord as a major 5 chord. In this case you would play G major. You then use this as a dominant 7th chord to resolve back to the minor 1 chord. Listen to the difference between them in the following examples. This is the same 5 chord as you saw in the major key. As such, you can also turn it into a 7 flat 5 chord. 7 flat 5 chords sound less dissonant and have a more satisfying resolution in minor keys when used as the 5 chord to resolve to the minor 1 chord. This is due to the movement of notes involved between each of the chords, creating a resolution to the tritone found within the 7 flat 5 chord. Listen to how less dissonant compared to the major key this cadence sounds in the following example. Understanding 7th chords is fundamental to using 7 flat 5 chords. Watch the playlist on screen now to further your 7th chord knowledge.